Trump's brief truce with Iran has not ended the argument over who misread whom and what the United States now faces if a longer fight restarts. Across the region and around the world, foreign capitals are asking a blunt question: did Washington underestimate Tehran, and has the intensity of recent operations strained America's ability to fight elsewhere? Russian commentary has been blunt, and among the louder voices has been Alexei Pushkov, a senior Russian lawmaker now serving as chairman of the Federation Council Commission on Information Policy. Alexei Pushkov said, "The kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and the very, I would say, weak reaction to it from the Venezuelans who chose to accept American conditions for controlling Venezuelan oil exports convinced Trump that a precise surgical military operation is a good tool for forcing a foreign regime to behave as the Americans please." That line, voiced in Moscow and widely quoted across state and regional media, frames a larger argument that American policymakers may have relied on earlier examples of coercion and expected a quick, clean result this time as well. Whether one accepts that reading or not, the operational facts on the ground and above it have forced a reappraisal. The war has exposed a hard math at the heart of modern conflict. High-tempo strikes and sophisticated defensive shoots consume expensive, hard-to-produce munitions. Analysts tracking the campaign say the United States, working closely with Israeli forces, has spent a startling share of inventories in a matter of weeks. Missile interceptors used to protect bases and cities, cruise missiles used for precision strikes, long-range standoff weapons, all have been drawn down at rates that would have been hard to imagine before the fighting. Those calculations matter because many of the very munitions expended in this theatre are the same kinds of weapons the United States would rely on in any future high-end contest, including scenarios that involve the Indo-Pacific. The concern is not simply short-term shortage. Replenishing modern interceptors and long-range strike missiles requires industrial capacity, procurement decisions, and time. Even with companies moving to expand production, replenishment timelines for some systems stretch into multiple years. Iran, for its part, has presented images and claims meant to undercut any narrative of decisive defeat. Footage released by the country's military shows underground launch and storage facilities, and commanders in Tehran insist that their forces have not only survived recent blows but used pauses to restore, rearrange, and harden their posture. Brigadier General Sayed Majid Musavi, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, posted video of overhaul work on missile and drone depots and made a pointed claim about tempo and recovery. Brigadier General Sayed Majid Musavi said Iran's speed in updating and reloading missile and drone launchers have surpassed even its pre-war pace. We are aware that the enemy is incapable of creating such conditions for themselves during the ceasefire. Since the ceasefire began on April 11th, the United States has had to bring in ammunition from the other side of the world in a trickle. They have lost this phase of the war as well. They have lost the Strait. They have lost Lebanon, and they have lost the entire region. Those public lines serve two purposes: to reassure domestic audiences that Iran remains operationally capable, and to signal to external partners and potential adversaries that Tehran remains a resilient shooting match. Independent assessments, imperfect and sometimes conflicting, suggest Tehran still retains a deep inventory of shorter-range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, much of it concealed or hardened. Intelligence and open source analysts note that underground storage and dispersed mobile launchers complicate efforts to eliminate a threat through limited strikes, and that rebuilding, while hard, is possible when much of the industrial base remains intact. Beyond Iranian recovery, the larger worry for Washington is the pace at which defensive and offensive munitions have been consumed. Warfare specialists and defense analysts have spoken of steep percentages of key systems being expended over a concentrated period. Patriot interceptors, the Tomahawk family of cruise missiles, and a range of ship-launched interceptors and long-range strike weapons were used in large numbers to blunt waves of drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic strikes, and to shape the battlefield in the first month and a half of fighting. Those figures, whether cited as percentages or as raw tallies, point to one operational reality. High-end capabilities are expensive to shoot, and production lines are not elastic overnight. Washington has moved to broaden and accelerate manufacturing. American defense firms and the Pentagon are also to be expanding production runs for missile interceptors and cruise missiles. Efforts include increasing annual outputs for certain interceptors and cruise missiles and restarting dormant lines where possible. But industry officials and independent analysts caution that even with maximum mobilization, restoring inventories to pre-war levels could take many months to years for some systems. That lag matters because it affects deterrence. When stockpiles are thin, adversaries can test resolve and probe defenses in ways they might not if they believe the United States could sustain an indefinite high rate of fire. At the same time, the war has surfaced difficult strategic trade-offs. Moving air defenses and interceptors into the Gulf to protect forces and regional partners has ripple effects elsewhere. Some Allied commands noted that batteries shifted from other theaters, reduced posture in places like the Western Pacific. That has been a central theme in the debate about the conflict. CT second-order effects, the same munitions and batteries protecting bases from Iranian salvos, are also parts of the layered deterrent that complicates adversary calculations near the first island chain and around Taiwan. That competition of resources is visible at sea as well a day's well. In the South China Sea and the Western Pacific, Chinese maritime forces staged large live-fire drills east of Luzon at roughly the same time Allied forces conducted their own exercises. Images released by Chinese state media showed a carrier-like task force and a high level of coordination, though Beijing withheld precise coordinates and detailed timelines. Observers pointed to the placement of a Type 055 class surface combatant near exercise areas as strategic signaling, a way to demonstrate modern surface firepower and an ability to project area denial capabilities into crucial sea lanes. Regional reporting and military watchers also flagged claims of a YJ-20 hypersonic anti-ship missile launch during the sea exercises. The launch reports remain unverified, and officials in multiple capitals treated the unconfirmed footage and accounts with caution. Still, the rumor alone captured the imagination of naval planners, a ship-launched weapon that can cruise at hypersonic speeds and then dive at terminal velocity, shrinks reaction times and complicates layered air defenses. Whether that specific system is operational at scale or was being trialed as a prototype, the conversation underscores how hypersonic or near hypersonic threats have become central to modern naval strategy. Back in the Gulf, the public displays of Iranian missiles and the rallies that accompanied them were unmistakable. Wide crowds, state-organized choreographies, and the presence of Allied flags from proxy groups sent an unmistakable political signal. Iran's leadership wanted to show reach, resolve, and a domestic audience aligned behind resistance. Paradas in Tehran and other cities showcased a range of ballistic systems, fanned imagery that linked military capability to broader political aims, a message intended as much for neighbors and potential targets as for domestic supporters. What the pause in fighting has also revealed is a diplomatic and intelligence effort operating in parallel with the military maneuvers. Indirect talks and shuttle diplomacy became the back-channel of choice as regional mediators and global powers moved to lower immediate escalation risk. Those conversations were fragile. Negotiators acknowledged that any round of talks would have to bridge deep mistrust and very different objectives. For Tehran, restoring deterrence and underscoring strategic survival was paramount. For Washington and its partners, limiting missile production and hardened stockpiles and ensuring Iranian capabilities could not threaten maritime commerce were core aims. In the meantime, both sides positioned to influence any future fight. There are also broader economic implications to the conflict's temp. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant share of the world's oil and LNG transits, became an early focus of maritime moves and countermoves and countermoves. Any disruption there has a direct, almost immediate effect on global energy markets. Insurance costs for tankers rose, shipping routes were reconsidered, and energy traders priced in the risk premium of broader instability. Even a localized naval or missile exchange in the Gulf can ripple through markets and hit consumers far from the theater. Taken together, these strands form a tougher narrative than the quick, neat campaign some planners may have envisioned. A regional strike that cripples an adversary's capacity. Instead, the Iran episode exposed the interplay of hardened infrastructure, dispersed launch and storage networks, proxy alignments across the Levant, and the industrial limits of the great powers when confronted with a sustained tempo of precision strike and high-volume defensive firing. For American strategists, the conversation now shifts to investment and posture. What industrial investments must be accelerated? Where do supply chain pinch points remain? How quickly can precision-guided munitions and interceptors be replaced without constraining other commitments? And crucially, how should planners think about deterrence when the costs of high-tempo warfare are both fiscal and strategic? For Tehran's leaders, the lesson they advance publicly is straightforward. Preparation matters. Underground facilities, hardened logistics, and a doctrine that blends missiles and drones with proxy forces all buy time and complicate an external actor's calculus. For regional capitals, the lesson is to brace for prolonged strategic competition and to recognize that local conflicts can have outsized implications for global military planning. And for international audiences, the pause that holds is fragile. Major capitals remain wary that the next round of violence could come quickly, that replenishment of immunity ones will continue slowly, and that each side will test the other's limits again. That makes the ceaseless work of diplomacy, the readiness of defense industries, and the clarity of alliance commitments more consequential than ever. What remains clear is that modern war is a systems problem, as much as a battlefield, one logistics and industry, hardening and concealment, diplomatic channels and public narrative. All of them shape outcomes. The Iran episode has handed everyone a stark reminder that tactical success in the short term does not automatically translate into strategic gains, and that the capacity to sustain conflict, defend alliances, and deter other competitors depends on more than just who fires the first shot. As leaders in Washington, Tehran, Moscow, and Beijing continue to posture, the world watches a complex contest unfold. A contest that is about missiles and drones, but equally about the industrial base, political will, and the gritty work of persuading populations. And the partners that a chosen course of action will yield more gain than risk. In the end, the question policymakers must answer is not simply whether they can strike, it is whether they can endure the consequences afterward.